Admiral stood alone on the bridge of the eternal flame, watching the stars burn in the distance. His scales had turned pale gray over the last few months. Stress did that to the... It made them look old before their time. 14 battles, 14 losses. His fleet, once the pride of the Dominion, was now a collection of damaged ships and broken warriors. The swarm had torn through his forces like fire through dry grass. Every strategy he tried, they predicted. Every formation he used, they countered. His tactical computers ran millions of simulations, and none of them showed victory. His officers no longer looked at him with respect. They looked at him with pity, and pity for a commander was worse than death. That was why he had made the request that no commander had ever made before, the request that would either save his fleet or destroy what little honor he had left. He had asked for a human. The shuttle arrived at exactly 1400 hours, Coalition Standard Time. Watched it dock through the observation window. It was a small vessel, barely large enough for a crew of 3. The humans always traveled light. They said it made them faster, thought it made them look poor. He walked down to the docking bay with his second-in-command, General. The general was not happy about this arrangement. He had made his feelings very clear in the War Council. Humans are unstable, had said. They fight without logic, they take risks that make no sense, they will get us killed. We are already dying, had replied. Perhaps a little instability is what we need. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Expected a team. Perhaps 5 or 6 human officers with equipment and supplies. Instead, a single figure stepped out. She was small, much smaller than had expected. Stood 8 feet tall on average, with thick scales and powerful limbs built for combat. This human barely reached 5.5 feet. She had black hair pulled back in a simple knot and dark eyes that seemed to notice everything at once. She wore a worn leather jacket over her coalition uniform, which was technically against regulations. She did not seem to care. She carried no weapons, no equipment cases, just a simple tucked under her arm. "Admiral," she said, her voice was calm and clear. "I am Lieutenant Park, Coalition Military Advisory Division. I understand you have a problem." Looked down at her. He had commanded fleets of thousands. He had fought in wars that spanned decades. And now his survival depended on this tiny creature who looked like she could be crushed with one hand. "You are alone?" he asked. "1 advisor per fleet," said. "Coalition policy. Too many humans in one place makes the other species nervous." She smiled slightly. "We have a reputation." General stepped forward. His yellow eyes were narrow with suspicion. "What reputation is that, human?" Looked up at him without any sign of fear. They were twice her size and could break her bones with a casual swipe. She did not seem impressed. "The reputation that gets commanders like Admiral to swallow their pride and ask for help," she said. "Shall we begin?" The next 3 days were unlike anything the crew of the Eternal Flame had ever experienced. Did not sleep, at least not that anyone could tell. She spent her hours walking through the ship, observing everything. She watched the warriors train in the combat halls. She studied the tactical displays in the war room. She sat in the mess hall and listened to soldiers talk. She asked questions constantly, simple questions that seemed almost foolish. Why do you always attack in triangular formations? Why do your ships stay so close together? Why do you retreat when you lose only 10% of your forces? They answered because they had always done these things. It was tradition. It was doctrine. It was the way of war. Nodded and wrote notes on her. She said nothing about their answers, but her silence felt like judgment. On the 4th day, she requested a meeting with Admiral and his senior officers. 17 commanders gathered in the war room, their scales gleaming under the cold lights. Stood at the center, looking impossibly small among the giants. "I have completed my initial assessment," she said. "Would you like to hear it?" Nodded. Activated her. A holographic display appeared above the central table, showing the eternal flame and its support vessels. "Your fleet has 17 critical weaknesses," she began. 17 places where they can predict your behavior and exploit it. I will start with the most obvious one. She pointed to the fleet formation. "You fly in perfect geometric patterns, every ship exactly where doctrine says it should be, every movement calculated to the smallest detail. This is beautiful, it is precise. It is also incredibly stupid." The room went cold. General's claws scratched against the table. "You dare insult military tradition," he growled. "I dare to tell you why you keep losing," replied. She did not raise her voice. She did not step back. "They are a hive mind. They process information faster than any computer you have. When you fly in predictable patterns, you are giving them a gift. You are telling them exactly what you will do before you do it." She changed the display to show recordings of past battles. Ships moving in perfect formation. Swarms adjusting instantly, surrounding them, destroying them. "You fight like a machine," said, "and machines can be calculated, predicted, defeated." She looked around the room. "You need to fight like something they have never seen before, something they cannot predict, something that breaks all the rules." Admiral leaned forward. "And what is that, Lieutenant?" Smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too many battles and survived them all. "You need to fight like humans," she said. The room erupted in protests. Officers shouted that humans were reckless, that their methods were primitive, that no one would ever lower themselves to such tactics. Raised one massive hand, and the room fell silent. He looked at for a long moment. He saw something in her eyes that he recognized. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose, someone who had already accepted the worst and decided to fight anyway. He had seen that look in his own reflection lately. "Tell me more," he said, and began to speak. She spoke of Earth's history, of wars fought with sticks and stones, of armies that won by refusing to play by the rules. She spoke of deception and sacrifice, of turning weakness into strength. They listened, some with anger, some with confusion, but slowly, one by one, they began to understand. The humans were not crazy. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors. The war room was quiet, too quiet. Admiral had learned to recognize this kind of silence. It was the silence that came before someone said something that would change everything. Stood at the tactical display, her small hands moving across the controls. She had been working for 6 hours straight building something. A plan, a strategy, something that would save them or doom them all. The senior officers sat around the table. General was there, his arms crossed over his massive chest. Commander, the youngest officer in the fleet, watched with curious eyes. The others wore expressions of doubt and suspicion. "Before I show you this plan," said, "I need you to understand something about humans, about how we think, about why we fight the way we do." She pulled up an image of a planet. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. "This is Earth," she said. For most of our history, we were not the strongest species on our planet. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were soft and slow and easy to kill." General snorted. "And yet you survived. How?" "We cheated," said simply. "Every single time we cheated. When animals were stronger than us, we made weapons. When the land was too harsh, we made fire. When there were too many enemies, we made traps. We never fought fair because we could not afford to fight fair. Fairness was a luxury for species that did not need to struggle." She changed the image to show ancient human battles, primitive warriors with spears and shields. "This is how humans learned to fight," she continued. "Not with honor, not with tradition, with desperation, with tricks, with the understanding that losing meant death and death meant extinction." Commander leaned forward. He was young for an officer, barely 40 cycles old. His scales were still bright green, not yet faded by age and stress. "You are saying that humans won because they had no other choice," he said. Nodded. "Exactly. We evolved under constant threat. Every generation we faced enemies that should have destroyed us, and every generation we found new ways to survive. We became very good at doing the impossible." She turned back to the tactical display and activated her plan. The room went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. This was the silence of complete shock. The display showed the eternal flame and its fleet. It showed the swarm's predicted positions, and it showed strategy. "You want us to destroy our own supply depot," General said slowly. His voice was flat, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "Yes," said. "The depot at Grid 7, the one that holds 3 months of fuel and ammunition." "Yes." Stood up so fast his chair crashed to the floor. "Are you insane? That depot is our lifeline. Without it we cannot sustain a long campaign. We cannot retreat. We cannot." "You cannot fight a long campaign anyway," interrupted. "They will crush you within 2 weeks. I have run the numbers. Admiral has run the numbers. We all know the truth. You are already dead. This plan is about becoming undead." The room was very still. Pointed to the display. "They cannot resist salvage. It is part of their biology. When they detect destroyed resources, they swarm to collect the remains. They cannot help themselves. It is instinct." She traced a line from the depot to an asteroid field nearby. "We position 3 strike teams here, hidden, silent. When the swarm the depot wreckage, they will leave their flanks exposed, and we will hit them from the sides where they are weakest." Commander studied the plan carefully. "But we lose the depot. We lose our supplies. Even if we win the battle, we will have nothing left." "You will have your lives," said. "You will have a victory, and most importantly, you will have proven that they can be beaten. That will bring reinforcements. That will bring hope. That is worth more than any supply depot." Admiral had not spoken since the meeting began. He sat in his chair, his ancient eyes fixed on the display. His claws tapped slowly against the table. "In our culture," he said finally, "destroying your own resources is considered the greatest dishonor. It means you have failed so completely that you would rather burn everything than let it be captured." Nodded. "In human culture it is called strategy." She pulled up more images, historical records from Earth's past. When the Russian people faced invasion, they burned their own cities, their own farms, their own homes. They left nothing for the enemy to use. The invaders won every battle, captured every piece of land, and still lost the war because there was nothing left to take. Another image, ancient warriors hiding inside a wooden horse. When the Greeks could not break through the walls of Troy, they pretended to retreat. They left behind a gift, a wooden horse. The Trojans brought it inside their city, thinking they had won. That night, Greek soldiers climbed out of the horse and opened the gates from within. Another image, ships burning in a harbor. When our explorers reached new lands, some commanders would burn their own ships. Their soldiers could not retreat. They could not run away. They could only fight forward because there was no way back. General sat down slowly. His face was difficult to read. "Your species destroys itself to win," he said. "My species does whatever it takes to survive," corrected. "There is a difference. We do not want to burn our cities. We do not want to sacrifice our ships. But when the choice is between losing everything or losing some things, we choose to lose some things. We choose to live." Commander looked at the plan again. He was starting to understand, could see it in his eyes. "If we do this," he said, "they will never be able to predict us again. They will always wonder what we might sacrifice next, what trap we might be setting." "Yes," said, "that is the point. We are not just destroying a supply depot. We are destroying their confidence. We are teaching them to fear us. And fear, Commander, is the most powerful weapon in any war." Admiral stood up. He was old and tired and had lost more battles than most commanders would survive. But at this moment, something changed in him. Something woke up. "Prepare the strike teams," he said. "Commander, you will lead the hidden fleet. General, you will coordinate the evacuation of the depot personnel." Opened his mouth to protest, but raised his hand. "I know this goes against everything we believe," said. "I know it feels like madness, but we have followed our traditions for 17 generations, and where has it brought us? To the edge of extinction. Perhaps it is time to try someone else's madness." He looked at Lieutenant Park. "You will have full tactical authority during the operation. My officers will follow your commands." Nodded. There was no smile on her face now, only determination. "Thank you, Admiral. I will not waste this chance." As the officers filed out to prepare, Commander stopped beside. "You really believe this will work?" he asked quietly. Looked up at him. For a moment he saw something behind her calm expression, something that looked almost like fear, but it was buried deep, locked away where it could not interfere. "I believe we have no other choice," she said, "and in my experience that is when humans are most dangerous." She walked away, leaving Commander alone with his thoughts. He looked at the tactical display one more time. The plan was insane. It violated every rule he had ever learned. It asked them to become something they were not. But as he stared at the holographic ships, he realized something. He was not afraid anymore. For the first time in months, he felt something that had been missing from the fleet. Hope. The supply depot at Grid 7 burned like a small sun. Watched from the bridge of the eternal flame as the explosion spread across the darkness of space. 3 months of fuel, thousands of tons of ammunition, medical supplies, repair materials, everything the fleet needed to survive a long war. Gone in an instant. Around her, the officers stood in stunned silence. They had followed the plan. They had evacuated the personnel. They had set the charges and triggered the detonation. But seeing it happen was different from planning it. Seeing their lifeline disappear into fire and debris felt like cutting off their own arm. "It is done," Admiral said quietly. His voice was heavy with something that might have been grief. "There is no going back now." Nodded. "Now we wait." They did not have to wait long. The swarm appeared on the sensors within the hour. Thousands of small ships moving together like a flock of birds. They came from all directions, drawn to the wreckage like insects to light. Their hive mind could not resist the opportunity. So much material, so many resources floating free in space. "They are taking the bait," Commander reported from his position in the asteroid field. His voice came through the comm system, clear but tense. "Counting over 2,000 vessels entering the debris zone." Studied the tactical display. They were spreading out, their formation loosening as individual ships raced to claim salvage. Their flanks were exposed. Their attention was focused on the wreckage. It was exactly what she had predicted. "Strike teams prepare to engage," she said. "On my mark, execute attack pattern Delta. Hit their supply carriers first. Without carriers, they cannot stay in the fight for long." "Understood," Commander replied. All teams standing by. Took a deep breath. This was the moment when her plan would either save them or destroy them. Mark! The asteroid field exploded with light. 3 strike teams burst from their hiding positions, weapons blazing. 40 ships against 2,000, but they had surprise on their side. The first wave of attacks tore through the flanks before the hive mind could react. Carriers shattered under concentrated fire. Smaller ships scattered in confusion. The swarm tried to reform, to reorganize, but they were everywhere at once, hitting from different angles, refusing to stay in one place. "This is working," General breathed from his station. "They are actually losing formation." Did not celebrate. She was watching the sensors too carefully. Something was wrong. The numbers did not match her calculations. "Admiral," she said sharply, "where is the rest of their fleet?" Checked his displays. His scales went pale. "Behind us," he said. A second fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the eternal flame. Over 3,000 vessels, appearing from nowhere. The hive mind had predicted the trap. They had sent the first fleet as bait of their own. They had been hunting them right back. "All ships evasive action," shouted. "Reform defensive positions." But it was too late. The second fleet was already firing. The eternal flame shuddered as the first impacts hit their shields. Smaller ships exploded in the darkness. General looked at with something like triumph in his eyes. "Your human tricks have failed, Lieutenant. We are surrounded." Did not respond to him. She was already moving, pushing past officers to reach the main communications console. "All ships, this is Lieutenant Park," she broadcast on every frequency. "Execute pattern Sigma 9. I repeat, Sigma 9. Commander, you have tactical command of the strike teams. Admiral, I need you to trust me." Stared at her. "What is pattern Sigma 9? "Something I hoped we would not need," said. She took a deep breath. "It means we stop fighting we stop fighting with formations and tactics and careful calculations. We fight like humans." "Which means what?" Looked him directly in the eyes. "It means we go completely insane." Before could respond, was speaking into the comm again. "All ships listen carefully. Break formation. I repeat, break formation completely. Do not follow any pattern. Do not coordinate with other ships. Attack whatever target is closest to you. Change direction randomly. Make no sense. Be unpredictable. Be chaos." General grabbed her arm. "You will get us all killed." Pulled free. The hive mind processes data faster than any computer. They predict movements based on patterns. If we have no pattern, they cannot predict us. If they cannot predict us, they cannot kill us efficiently. That is madness. That is survival. The fleet responded to her orders. Not all of them. Some captains refused to abandon their training. But enough of them, the desperate ones, the ones who had nothing left to lose, they listened. Ships broke from formation and scattered across the battlefield. Cruisers turned in random directions. Fighters dove straight at enemy carriers, not in attack runs but in wild spirals that made no tactical sense. They hesitated. Their hive mind tried to process the chaos, tried to find patterns that were not there. Individual ships began to collide with each other, their coordination breaking down as they received conflicting commands. Commander saw the opportunity. Strike teams now hit their command carriers, the big ones in the center. His 40 ships tore through the confused formation, targeting the largest vessels. These were the ships that coordinated the hive mind, the ones that kept the swarm organized. When they started taking damage, the entire fleet began to fall apart. The battle became something no had ever experienced. Ships fighting individually with no overall plan, no grand strategy. Just survival, just chaos, just the desperate will to live one more minute. Watched the tactical display, her heart pounding in her chest. They were taking losses, heavy losses, but they were taking more. Their perfect coordination was their greatest strength but also their greatest weakness. When it broke, they could not adapt. Humans could adapt. Humans had been adapting for millions of years. And now they were learning to adapt too. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it finally ended, they retreated. Their remaining ships fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of over 1,000 destroyed vessels. They had lost 17 ships, 4,000 warriors dead. But they had won. The bridge of the eternal flame was silent as the reality set in. Officers stared at their displays, unable to believe what they were seeing. General sat in his chair, his face unreadable. Admiral turned to, "We won," he said softly. "We actually won." Nodded, her face was pale. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. Yes, she said, we won. Noticed her trembling. You do not seem happy, Lieutenant. Looked at the casualty reports on her. 4,000 names. 4,000 warriors who had followed her strategy and died for it. I am happy we survived, she said. I am not happy about the cost. She turned and walked off the bridge without another word. Commander found her later in the observation deck, standing alone in the darkness, staring at the debris field where so many had died. Lieutenant Park did not turn around. 4,000, Commander, 4,000 lives because of my plan. Walked up beside her. 4,000 lives saved us all. Without your plan, we would all be dead. 30,000 on this fleet alone. I know the math, said. Her voice was tired. I have always known the math. It does not make it easier. Studied her face in the starlight. He was beginning to understand something about humans that the files did not explain. They felt everything. Every death, every loss, every sacrifice. They carried it with them like stones in their hearts. And they kept fighting anyway. You are not as cold as they think you are, he said. Finally looked at him. Her eyes were wet, though no tears fell. No, she whispered, I am not. They stood together in silence, watching the stars burn in the distance. Behind them, the eternal flame began the long process of recovery. The battle was over. But the war was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The Battle of the Burning Stars, they called it. The impossible victory. The day the fleet destroyed their own supplies, embraced chaos, and broke the back of the swarm's advance. Within 1 week, every major news network was telling the story. Within 2 weeks, the Galactic Coalition Senate was debating what it meant. Within 1 month, everything changed. Commander Han received his orders on a Tuesday morning. He was being assigned to the Lyra Collective, a species of aquatic beings who had been losing ground to raiders for over a year. They had specifically requested a human advisor. Captain Sara was sent to the Federation. Specialist Wu joined the Tailai's remnant. Lieutenant was assigned to the outer colonies, where small independent worlds struggled to survive. Humans were suddenly the most valuable resource in the galaxy. And that terrified everyone. The Coalition Senate building on planet was an enormous structure, built to hold representatives from over 200 species. Its halls echoed with 1,000 different languages, 1,000 different cultures, all trying to exist together. On this particular day, the main chamber was filled to capacity. Senators and ambassadors from every corner of known space had gathered to discuss the human question. A diplomat stood at the central podium. His name was unpronounceable in most languages, so the translators simply called him the Voice. He was unusual among his kind, chosen specifically because he could think independently of the hive mind. He was their ambassador to chaos. Humans do not fight wars, the Voice declared. His words echoed through the chamber. They corrupt wars. They transform honorable combat into madness. They teach other species to abandon their principles, their traditions, their very identities. He pointed toward the human delegation, where several officers sat in uncomfortable silence. Before humans, they fought with precision and honor. Now they burn their own supplies. They attack without patterns. They embrace randomness like a disease. This is not evolution. This is infection. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many heads nodded in agreement. We demand that the coalition restrict human military advisors, the Voice continued. They must be contained, controlled, before their chaos spreads to every corner of the galaxy. The human ambassador, a gray-haired woman named Director, rose to respond. They requested our help, she said calmly. They were losing, they were dying, and when we helped them survive, you call it infection. You changed them, the Voice shouted. You made them something they were not. Director smiled slightly. We made them survivors. Is that not what every species wants to be? The debate continued for hours. Some species supported the humans, others demanded restrictions. The delegation remained silent, their faces unreadable. Far away, on the eternal flame, Admiral faced a different kind of trial. The High Council had summoned him to answer for his actions. 17 elders sat in judgment, their ancient scales dull with age, their eyes sharp with centuries of tradition. "You have brought shame to the Dominion," the chief elder declared. "You destroyed sacred resources. You abandoned our tactical doctrines. You allowed an alien to command our warriors." Stood before them, his back straight despite his exhaustion. He had not slept properly since the battle. The weight of 4,000 dead still pressed on his shoulders. "I did what was necessary to survive," he said. "Survival without honor is not survival," another elder replied. "It is merely existing, that would rather die with dignity than live as something we are not." "Then the will die," said simply, "because they do not care about our dignity, they do not respect our traditions. They only understand one thing, strength. And strength, elders, is not about fighting the way we have always fought. It is about winning." The council chamber fell silent. Took a deep breath. "I have served the Dominion for 60 cycles. I have led fleets into battles that history books will remember. And in all that time, I have never seen our people face extinction. Until now." He gestured toward the window, where distant stars burned in the darkness. "They are coming. They will not stop. They will not negotiate. They will consume everything we have built. And when they do, what will our traditions matter? What will our honor mean when there are no left to remember it?" He looked at each elder in turn. "The humans showed us a different way, not a better way, not an honorable way, but a way that works, a way that keeps our people alive. And I would rather be judged by history as a coward who saved his species than as a hero who let them die." The chief elder was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer. "You truly believe this human strategy is our only hope?" "I believe it is our best hope," replied, "and I believe we have no time to find another." The council voted. It was close, closer than anyone expected, but in the end was acquitted by a margin of 1 vote. That night he found in the ship's garden a small section of the vessel designed to remind thee of there. Plants from a dozen planets grew here, filling the air with strange and beautiful scents. "You for me," said. Nodded. She was sitting on a stone bench, looking up at the artificial sky. "You took a chance on me. It seemed fair to return the favor." Sat down beside her, his massive form making the bench creak. For a moment they sat in silence, two very different beings sharing a small moment of peace. "May I ask you something, Lieutenant?" "Of course." Turned to face her. "Why do humans fight so hard for species that are not your own? You risk your lives, your careers, your sanity for people who are not your family, not your tribe, not even your species. I do not understand." Was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Do you know the history of Earth, Admiral?" "Only what the files contain." "Then you know that humans spent most of their history fighting each other. Wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas. We killed millions of our own kind for reasons that seem foolish now." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But somewhere along the way, we learned something. We learned that the darkness does not care what species you are. The cold of space does not ask about your traditions. The void is empty, and it will swallow everything eventually." She looked at and he saw something in her eyes that he had not seen before. Not tactical brilliance, not military determination, something deeper. Humans fight for other species because we know what it feels like to be alone. We spent millions of years on a tiny planet, looking up at the stars, wondering if anyone else was out there, wondering if we were the only ones facing the darkness. She smiled slightly. "Now we know we are not alone, and we decided a long time ago that no one should have to face that darkness by themselves. Not if we can help it. Considered her words. In culture, strength was individual. You survived by being stronger than your enemies, not by helping strangers. But perhaps that was why they were losing. And perhaps that was why humans, despite their small size and their soft bodies and their impossible emotions, had become the most feared advisors in the galaxy. "Thank you, Lieutenant," said finally, "for everything." Nodded, "Thank me when we win the war, Admiral. We are not done yet." They sat together in the garden as the ship traveled through the darkness between stars. Behind them, the galaxy burned with conflict. Ahead of them, more battles waited. But for this moment, at least, they were not alone. 5 years passed like the turning of distant stars. The war with the swarm did not end with fire or conquest. It ended in a room on the eternal flame, with two beings sitting across from each other, speaking words that would change history. Commander Park, newly promoted after years of service, faced the Queen Mind directly. The being before her was not like anything she had ever seen. It was not a single creature but a living network, a consciousness that spanned 10 billion individual drones across 1,000 worlds. It spoke through a physical avatar, a pale figure with too many eyes, but its true self existed in the spaces between stars. "You have confused us," the Queen Mind said. Its voice was layered, a chorus of millions speaking as one. "For 3 cycles we have studied human behavior. We have processed every decision, every tactic, every moment of chaos you have introduced to our enemies, and we have reached a conclusion." Waited. "You are not predictable," the Queen Mind continued. "Your species does not follow logical patterns. You sacrifice when you should preserve. You retreat when you should attack. You destroy your own resources when you should protect them. You feel emotions that cloud your judgment, and yet those emotions somehow make you stronger." The Queen Mind's many eyes blinked in sequence. "We cannot calculate you. We cannot model you. We cannot consume what we cannot understand." Leaned forward. "And what does that mean for this war?" "It means we will withdraw." The words hung in the air. After 3 years of constant battle, countless deaths, entire worlds burned to ash, they were surrendering, not because they had been defeated militarily, not because they lacked resources, but because they could not predict what humans would do next. "You are chaos given form," the Queen Mind said, "and chaos is the only thing we truly fear." The peace treaty was signed aboard the Eternal Flame 3 days later. Representatives from 47 species witnessed the ceremony. Admiral, now Supreme Commander of the entire Dominion fleet, stood beside Commander Park as history was made. When the last signatures were recorded, the celebration began. Ships fired lights into space. Soldiers embraced former enemies. Millions across the galaxy wept with relief. But did not celebrate. She stood on the observation deck, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had been lost to reach this moment. Commander found her there, just as he had found her after the first battle, years ago. "You should be down there," he said. "This is your victory." "It is everyone's victory," replied, "and it cost too much to celebrate." Nodded, he understood. The years had changed him. He was no longer the young officer who had been shocked by human tactics. He had learned to fight like a human, to think like a human, to feel like a human. Some of his fellows said he had lost himself. He knew he had found something better. "What will you do now?" he asked. Shrugged, "There will be other wars, other species that need help. The galaxy is a big place and darkness never truly goes away." "Will you take a rest first?" Smiled slightly. "Humans are not very good at resting, Commander. We get bored." In the years that followed, human advisors became both legend and nightmare throughout the galaxy. Commander hand saved the Lyra Collective by teaching them to fight in 3 dimensions instead of 2. Their aquatic biology had never considered aerial tactics. Hand showed them that water and air were not so different when you understood the principles of pressure and movement. Captain Sora rebuilt the Federation's entire military doctrine. She introduced the concept of special operations, small teams trained to strike important targets instead of fighting massive battles. They had never imagined that 5 soldiers could accomplish what 5,000 could not. Specialist Wu became famous among the Tailai's remnant for his work on psychological warfare. He taught them that fear was a weapon, that reputation could win battles before they started. Within 2 years, the Tailais were no longer targets. They were predators. And across the frontier, wherever species faced impossible odds, a pattern emerged. A commander would look at their hopeless situation, calculate 0% chance of survival, and then reach for their communication device. "I need a human," they would say. And within hours, someone would arrive. Someone small, someone fragile, someone who looked nothing like a warrior. Someone who would look at their desperate situation and smile. Because humans did not believe in impossible. They had spent millions of years proving that impossible was just another word for not yet. Admiral Kep's old leather jacket in a display case in his office. She had left it behind when she departed for her next assignment, and he had never returned it. It hung there as a reminder of everything they had learned together. Sometimes, when the weight of command became too heavy, he would look at that jacket and remember a small human standing on his bridge, unimpressed by his 8-foot warriors, ready to teach them how to survive. Commander established the first joint human military academy on the. It was controversial. Many elders opposed it, but had learned something from that no textbook could teach. Sometimes you had to break tradition to save tradition. The Academy's motto was a quote from a human general who had lived and died long before anyone reached the stars, had chosen it himself after reading through thousands of pages of human military history. In war, the only constant is chaos. Master it and you master everything. The first class graduated with 50 warriors who had learned to fight like humans. Within 5 years, there were 5,000. Within 10 years, there were 50,000. And somewhere on the frontier, a young commander named faced an impossible battle. Her fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Her ships were damaged from a previous engagement. Her crew was exhausted and afraid. She looked at the tactical display. The enemy was closing in. Her calculations showed 0% chance of survival. 0%. She remembered hearing stories about the Battle of the Burning Stars, about a human who had taken a hopeless situation and turned it into victory, about chaos as a weapon. She reached for her communication device. "Coalition Command, this is Commander of the Federation. I need a human advisor, urgent priority." Within 6 hours, a small shuttle docked with her flagship. A young woman stepped out, barely reaching 5 feet tall, wearing a worn leather jacket that looked decades old. "Commander," the human said, "I am Lieutenant. I understand you have an impossible situation." Nodded, her 3 eyes blinking nervously. "Our chances of survival are 0. Smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had heard those words before and had never believed them. 0% is just a starting point," she said. "Show me what we are working with." She walked onto the bridge without fear, without hesitation, without any sign that she considered failure a possibility. Behind her, the next war was about to begin. And somewhere in the galaxy, in the halls of military academies and the records of countless victories, a simple truth was being taught to every species that wanted to survive. Humans do not fight to win. They fight because they refuse to lose. And there is, as any veteran commander will tell you, a profound and terrifying difference. The darkness between stars is cold and empty. It cares nothing for tradition or honor or logic. It swallows everything eventually. But humans learned long ago that darkness can be fought, not with size or strength or superior technology, but with will, with creativity, with the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They brought that lesson to the stars. And the galaxy was never the same.